Hi guys. Um, so yeah, by the title of the video, you kind of have an idea of what this video is about. Um, Trigger warning, I will talk about assault, physical violence, I will talk about depression, I will talk about anxiety, I will talk about suicide, I will talk about triggers. So proceed with caution if you feel like you're sensitive, or it might make you feel like you're going to spiral down a black hole. Stop. You can watch this video when you feel like you're mentally stronger, or you have the support system you need to, or maybe you're just in a better place. I'm making this video because it's been 2 years, 2.5 years since I was assaulted, and I keep thinking, I've had enough time and I'm okay now. And I am okay now. In a lot of ways, I'm okay. In a lot of ways, I've grown. In a lot of ways, I've healed. In a lot of ways, I'm happy. But in a lot of ways, I'm still exactly where I was. And in a lot of ways, I'm still dealing with my demons. And I went onto YouTube because YouTube is kind of like a safe place for me where I can connect with other people and see how other people have handled things. And I just couldn't find anything on physical assault. I found a lot of videos on sexual assault. I know there are a lot of people out there who've been through something similar to what I've been through, and they're looking for something, for some support, to see a friendly face, to see someone who's gone through it, and to see whether or not they've made it out the other side alive. And the more I talk about it, the more I heal. And the more I talk about it, the more I realize that this happens to so many people in so many different ways, on so many levels, and it makes me feel less alone. And so in a way, I'm being selfish by making this video, because I am trying to heal a part of myself that is still hurt. It's also kind of difficult to keep putting yourself out there and talking about it, especially if it's been a few years, because there's a voice in the back of your head telling you you've had enough time, you should be okay now. So I'm going to just insert a video I made about 6 months after it happened, because it's the only time I've ever been able to record it in one shot. And the video was extremely close to when it happened, so you'd get a better sense of where I was and who I wasn't back then and what I was going through. And I was a different person. So trigger warning, it gets very difficult. If you don't feel like you can watch through this part, like I said, come back when you're feeling stronger, because I rewatched it today I think I rewatched it for the first time after I made it, and it was really difficult for me to see myself like that. But I'm putting it out there because I know there are lots of things in that video that you might relate to. And after the video, we can talk about how I've been doing. So stay tuned. Bear with me, because I'm sure I'll choke up. I tried to write what happened. I couldn't get through. There were 3 girls that night. What happened was that I was being followed by one initially, and the other 2 were on the right side of the street. And then they switched. There were 2 on one side, and there was 1 on the other. Growing up, I've always been told to look for men, not women, so I didn't think anything of it. They were young. They were 14 and 16. They were so young. How was I supposed to know? Anyways, they followed me, and one of them grabbed a bunch of my hair. It was up like this, and yanked it. And that put me in shock. And so I wasn't quite sure how to respond. I still thought it was someone I could have known. Even now, if someone runs up to me, I get really stressed out, because I don't think it's someone I know. I think it's someone trying to hurt me. And I always have to have my back against the wall, because I feel like there's someone behind me. Anyways, after they pulled my hair, honestly, the rest of it's a blur now. It's just a blur of being dragged on the ground, and trying to get back up, and I was in heels, so I couldn't get up like just like that. It was a lot of buckling. I had my backpack on my bag. My laptop was in my bag, thank God. Nothing happened to it on my hard drive. I was supposed to graduate in the month after, and I did. And I remember asking them, why are you doing this? Did I do something? And I think they just got annoyed, or they got more aggravated when I started asking questions. So they kept telling me to shut the fuck up. They called me a bitch. And I remember thinking, I'm not a bitch. I've never done anything to deserve this. And I started choking up and crying, and I started screaming, and then just screaming, no words, just screaming. And then they kept hitting me, and that's when I beat myself. And it was really, when I urinated myself, I gave up, because it was just such a defeat. Like everything in my body just released, and I knew there was no getting out of it, and I just had to take that shit. And I gave up then. I stopped fighting them. I didn't stop screaming. I kept screaming, and no one came out. No one came out, and it felt like it was going on for a while. It was only a few minutes, and it felt like a lifetime, let me tell you. And so I kept screaming, and at this point my eyes were swelling up. They were swelling closed. I couldn't see much. And they kept hitting my head, and I remember my nose started bleeding, and all I could see was blood on the ground. And at some point I was on my back staring up while they were kicking my face, and I still have a bruise that has not gone away. And then I remembered in an article I'd read a few years ago that if you are, God forbid, being raped or assaulted or any form of physical abuse, or you're in a situation where you need help, you scream fire. Do not scream help, because unfortunately people don't respond to that. And so I kept screaming fire. And someone finally stuck their head out the window. And they yelled at them, and they said that they were going to call the cops. And so the girls left me. They never once tried to take my phone, even though my phone was lying right there on the ground next to my hand. I kept trying to pull it so they wouldn't take it away, because I needed to call 911. And mind you, Alia Pupa was only 9 buildings away. She didn't even hear it. No one did. And then they walked maybe 5-6 spaces ahead, and then she turned around and looked at me like this. Like, I'm sorry, that's comical, but it's really not. And I crawled across the street. I couldn't see. My face was wet. I couldn't tell if it was from crying or their blood, or I was wet everywhere. I was feeling disgusting. My body was in shock. My whole body was warming up, I remember. And the woman who stuck her head out of the window, she told me to come to her, but I was so scared. I couldn't trust anyone. I didn't want to go to her either, but I did. And she called 911. And then I called my aunt, and I told her I was jumped, and she didn't understand what I was saying. But she came out, and I told her where I was. And to be honest, I don't know how much more I can tell you, because I don't think about that event. I think about the little moments, like the feeling of having peed myself, and how scared I was, and how I just gave up. I couldn't do anything to protect myself, and mostly that there was no one there to protect me. Yeah, so I know that was intense. I'm really sorry that you had to hear that. But if you went through that, or even vaguely similar to that, I know you'll connect with some of the things that I was saying, like about how I felt so helpless and so alone and so small and so delicate, and how no one would come out to help me. And later on I found out that the whole neighborhood had heard and they just didn't want to come out. And like the police and the detectives, they did question people, they did interviews, and everyone said the same thing, that they heard some screaming. They said that they heard me screaming fire, so that does apparently help. It helped me. I got my one witness to come out in the end. So fast forward to what happened after the cops showed up, because this is something people don't usually talk about, and it's crazy because the cops showed up and they started immediately asking me questions, and they wanted me to relay exactly what had happened. They were fixating on little details. They were kind of intimidating because they kept asking me, are you sure? Are you sure? And they made me feel like I couldn't get anything wrong. And mind you, this is like a minute or two after I've just been beaten up. And so not only are my eyes starting to swell up, they were shuttering. I couldn't see, I couldn't breathe out of my nose. I had just gone into shock. I was heating up and my body was buzzing from adrenaline. I remember my mouth was tingling. I didn't feel like myself. I felt a little detached from my body. I was definitely having an out-of-body experience from the shock of it all. And so like none of it seemed real, and I just wasn't there when they were asking me these questions. I wasn't being able to remember all these details. And the cops then, they let me go. They sent me to the ER in the ambulance, and I was sitting in my, it might make you feel uncomfortable. I'm used to it now, but I was sitting there in my own pee, and I feel like an animal. I feel like an animal that was beaten on the side of the road and just left there. And when we got to the ER, it was like a blur. Even now I can recall it being a blur, and my aunt was with me the entire time, thank God. And I was, even in that moment, my first thought was, oh my God, I have class in the morning. Like, I can't go to class like this, can I? And my aunt was just like, take a second and realize what you've just gone through. Don't worry about class, we'll handle it. You just breathe. And I think when she said that, it really hit me that like I was just assaulted. Like, I thought I was going to die. So what happened is that I took about 26 like kicks to the face, both at the back of my head and in front. So I had 3 hematomas, which is a fancy word for excessive bruising. My nose was so badly hit and swollen that at first glance they all thought it was broken, and after my CAT scan and my x-ray and everything, they couldn't assess whether or not that was the case. I think also because they didn't get the results immediately. So I was discharged from the ER around 4 or 5 a.m. and the assault happened at around 11:30 p.m. I couldn't sleep the whole night, and I kept thinking that something was going to happen to me. They knew the neighborhood I lived in, they'd find me. And then I kept thinking I'm going to pee myself, and that actually ended up becoming my biggest trigger. Is that now it's 2.5 years, I still deal with this. When I'm really stressed out, I feel like I need to relieve myself, and if I'm not near a restroom, it really bothers me. So long car rides are a big no-no. Being on a plane, I have to sit in the aisle seat. I need access to a restroom. Even when I'm at the office, I get like social anxiety if I know the bathroom is really far away and I feel like people are noticing how often I use it. So that's something that stayed with me. I ended up cutting all my hair off about 7 months after the assault, because it was just too much of a trigger. It would get stuck in my armpit, it would get stuck in my pillows. If someone hugged me, it would really bother me. My head just became a very sensitive place. I didn't like anyone touching it, even my mother. And I remember she was very upset and shocked when she came to see me. She came the next day, or 2 days after the assault. She came to hug me, and I flinched, and she's like, I'm your mother. And I was like, I don't want to be touched right now. And so I had about a week or two to just gather myself. I was excused from my courses. I was graduating in a month. And then after those 2 weeks, I went and got a haircut. I got a thick fringe to cover all the cuts and bruises on my forehead. I put a lot of makeup on to conceal my bruises because I just didn't want people to talk to me. The blood vessels in my eyes had popped, so I looked really scary. I looked like a vampire. It was quite disgusting, but I'm gonna be lighthearted about it because it's more digestible. I had a hard time making eye contact with people because I was embarrassed. Okay, can you imagine? I was a victim in this situation. I was attacked and I was embarrassed. And I was embarrassed because I felt weak. And I felt like if I told someone what had happened, their first reaction would have been like, why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you run away? And, it was 3 against 1. I was in heels. And like, when something like that happens, you're not there. It's, you don't have time to react. All these things, basically it's not your fault, and it's taking me a very long time to believe and understand that what happened was not my fault. It could have happened to anyone. I don't think I could have fought them. I just couldn't have. No amount of self-defense classes would have helped me in this very specific situation. So it took me a really long time to start to feel like myself again. Everyone's journey is different. Everyone's recovery time is different. I'm still recovering. One of the most important things I've ever heard, and I know it'll help you if you have been through something, is that, progress and healing is not linear. I've seen a bunch of people say this to me, and it really resonates with me. It's not linear. You don't just keep progressively getting better. Sometimes you go backwards. Sometimes there's no sense of forward and backwards. Sometimes you're just kind of not existing. And that's when the depression came into place. I was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety. I had situational depression because of what had happened. It just impacted everything. I was in therapy. Therapy was not helping me. And then my health insurance ran out because I had graduated and I had to renew it. So I did not have access to affordable healthcare. So I had to give it up. When I stopped taking therapy, things really started getting bad. When my parents left in July, I had a massive breakdown because I finally faced what was going on with me, because from April till about July, I was so busy with graduating and my parents keeping me busy because my parents and my brother came to visit me. I didn't have time to deal with what was going on. I was just busy. I was a graduate. I was going on vacation with my family. I was okay. I was normal. I was okay. I'm healing. Like, you're healing, Anushka. These are the conversations I was having with myself. I was being a little aggressive. I wasn't allowing myself the time to sit down and be like, something horrible happened to me, and it's okay for me to be vulnerable, and it's okay for me to be weak and small and helpless, because that's exactly what was going on. And when mom and dad left, I was a shell of a person, and I'm very, very lucky that I had a few close friends and family who were there to help me ride that phase of my life out, because if I had not had that support system, I would not be here today. There were weeks actually, where I wasn't leaving my room because I didn't have a job at that time. I was in the middle of getting my work authorization card because I was an international student, and I was trying to get my OPT, so I wasn't allowed to work. I was freelancing, but it wasn't enough to keep me busy. And then all these other things started happening, right? My bladder, I couldn't take the subway anymore. I couldn't leave my house. I couldn't ride a bike. I couldn't do anything that required me to be away from a bathroom. And then I kind of started isolating myself. I stopped meeting people. I started letting go of friendships because I didn't want to tell them what had happened. And if they didn't know, I didn't want to tell, like, I just didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want them to see me as this person, because I went from being, in my head, an extroverted, naive, loving, happy person. I turned into this nightmare version of myself where I couldn't even make eye contact with people. I couldn't speak. I couldn't go out. I couldn't do anything. I was just constantly distracting myself, and that's a bad place to be in. Anyhow, fast forward, in December that year, I cut my hair. And that's when I started really feeling some progress, because that was a really big trigger. And once I cut my hair, I felt really free. I will insert a little clip of what it was like when I got my hair cut. Hi. So as you can see, a lot has happened
since I last made one of these. So I got my haircut on Tuesday. Today's Friday. It's just faster and quicker and easier to take care of, and that's something I took for granted. When I had long hair, it was not easy. It was not fast. It was always getting stuck everywhere. It was dead. It was unhealthy. You know, I can feel how thick and clean and nice my hair is now, and like that definitely makes a difference. You know, just remember that this is what you wanted right now, and you're happy with it. Like, you're genuinely happy, and it feels good to run your hand through your hair, and look at that. See? Clean and nice.
So yeah, that's how happy I was, and that's how relaxed I was, and you can see the relief. You can see how much I progressed from the previous video, you know, which was taken in August, and then you can see much how much I don't know, like how much I'd grown. And that other video was in December with my short hair, and I was in a very good relationship as well. The person who I was with was very loving and very supportive and very nurturing and very patient, and I have to thank him for that, because I can't you know, I don't know how I wouldn't have made it through without that. And it must have been very difficult being with someone who was that sick and who was that traumatized and who was healing. It takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of love to be with someone like that, and so I thank you. You know who you are. And then yeah, I fast forward another year and I moved back to Pakistan in August of 2018. And I really started to feel better once I moved back to Pakistan, because my environment changed. Another thing I've read, and it really resonates with me, is that you can't heal in the place that made you sick. I think it's something along the lines of that, and it's true. When I was living in New York, I was too close to it all, and it was just overstimulating, and it made me very anxious. I never had the room to heal. When I came back to Pakistan, I had all these luxuries and all this comfort and like my family, and that really helped propel me forward in a way I wasn't being able to move in the States. I started working at Ideas Gul Ahmed, and I made a lot of good relationships and friends along the way. I increased my support system. Being around my parents and my brother really helped me. Being around my aunt Nushy really helped me, because when I was in New York, I was with Elise and Alia, and they really helped me. They nurtured me while I was, you know, going through all of that. But coming back to Pakistan and talking to Nushy really helped me, because she was also going through a lot of anxiety and trauma in her own ways. And it's not my place to talk about her story, but she gave me a lot of strength, and she gave me a lot of room and patience, and she really understood what I was going through, and having that relationship really helped me, and it still helps me to this day. She's one of the few people who I can sit and talk to, and she gets it, and she's exactly what I need when I need it. And you know, when you have a relationship like that, it really helps you heal. So I don't want to like crunch everything up. It's just there's a lot that's happened, and today was a really tough day. Today was a day where, you know, I've had a lot of progress. I haven't had any triggers in a while. I've had a few panic attacks in the past few months, but I've been feeling normal. I've been feeling like me, like Anushka, and it's been great. But today was hard, and I must have used the restroom 2 or 3 times an hour, and that really set me back, because it was just a reminder. It brought me back to where I was the year it happened, and it made me realize that healing and progress is not linear. I'm still healing. I have healed, but today was bad. And I don't know, I guess I don't want to end this on a negative note. Believe it or not, my day was like a 2 or 3, and now it's like a 7. And that's progress for me. I'm feeling a lot better now that I've reflected on everything that's going on, and I've understood why I'm feeling bad. And I just seeing those videos from before and realizing where I am now, I am doing so much better, which is why I'm making these videos, because I'm being able to see I'm actually being able to see myself heal. And I kid you not, without these videos and my writing, I would never have been able to grasp how far I've come and how much joy and relief it gives me to see that I'm alive, I'm here, and I'm happy, and I am functioning, and I wasn't back then. So, you know, if you go through something traumatic, record it, write it, talk about it, because I promise you, you will want to look back and reflect on it, because you'll want to see how far you've come. You'll want to understand that something horrible and painful happened to me, but now in the present, even if my present is horrible and I am upset and I'm depressed and I feel like I want it to just end, there has been growth, there has been progress. I am better than what I was back then, and that in itself is the biggest achievement you could ask for. So yeah, that is the story of my assault, and this is where I am right now. And yeah, I know I don't have a lot of videos up on this channel. I don't want this to be my cornerstone. I don't want everyone to remember me as this girl who was assaulted in New York. I am so much more than that. But I wanted to share this part with you guys because I am very open and I'm very transparent, but I've been quiet about it because I've been telling myself that enough is enough. It's been over 2 years. You should be fine by now. And that's wrong. Don't ever tell yourself that. It's not right to tell myself that I should be okay right now. There is no set timeline to healing. I'll be healing for the rest of my life. And that's not a bad thing. It means I've survived. It means I'm a survivor. That I made it out to the other side. And I'm here now. So I hope this helps. And if you have been through something, if you want to talk, you have questions, please reach out to me. I'm actually very friendly. I'm very forthcoming. I remember I reached out to a lot of people when it happened to me. I actually reached out to a lot of strangers, and I got a lot of comfort from it because in a way they didn't know anything about my life and they couldn't judge me, and they didn't. And I promise you, I will never judge, and I will never make you feel like what happened to you is any less or more than another person. You have your own story, and you have your own timeline for your growth and for your healing, and I can be there for that if you need it, just the way people have been there for me. So yeah, if you like this video, like it, and if you dislike it, that's okay too. So yeah, that's that.